Hello, everyone. I hope we are totally online and streaming. And for some reason, yeah, we have a little bit strange situation because my partner somehow is not joining us. So, well, it is live, and the whole idea of today's conversation is that we are having coaching conversations. So it's not a lecture, and it's not that what uh, like a what just I think about the subject. We kind of co-create uh, maybe some new understanding or more rich understanding of the subject by discussing it with the two, sometimes even three people. So today John's supposed to join me at 4:30, but right now he's still not in the call. So, well, it's going to be some kind of solo situation. All right. So, for people who did not attend the previous sessions, there were two sessions already which we devoted to the topic of fear and uncertainty. So, and during our first conversation, John come up with the abbreviation or acronym which he created. Fear could be the process of fighting the fear or overcoming the fear, or actually transition through fear. I would say maybe that's the best way to say it. Can be coded into the 4 stages. And F, fear. F stands for facing. So the first stage is we're supposed to face our fears. E stands for exploring. Um, that two first stages, facing and exploring, we already touched in our previous conversation. And the idea of facing, well, we have different kind of ways how we understand. By we, I mean John give one explanation what F stands for and what does it mean to face fear. From my position, facing, it's a little bit different process. For me, facing, it's more like noticing or become aware. As I said, it will be almost impossible to change something or to find the way to make some amendments in areas where you are not able to notice even. So something always have a control over you unless you notice it. And so for me, the noticing or to become aware is the key to any kind of change. And right now we are talking about change in relation to our fears. So noticing fear, that would be in of a terminology, it would be a facing. Well, after facing, exploring. So what does it mean really to explore? Exploration, it's again, John and me, we were discussing the like two different ways how we could explore stuff. One way to explore it verbally. I mean, in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and in coaching, we would be calling it reframing the problem, or find a new description or new understanding, new perspective by using conversational way of reframing the issue. And in my case, my exploration is, oh, John, you decided to join us. Awesome. That's good. All right. Welcome to the club. I am just performing serious solo, solo session, solo discussion, I would say. And going, how to say it, fearlessly, you know, through the subject without you. Okay.
Yes.
That's no problem. Not okay. That's fine. We have lots of things to deal with. And so, yeah, I hope you're going to switch, quickly to our topic. And right now, I just made a very quick refreshment for people who maybe didn't watch our previous session, that we are today supposed to explore the third stage, accept. This is a super tricky word. I was so curious that I decided to, of course, to look at our all-knowing Google, and dig for the roots of the word accept. So it's kind of Latin, some people refer to the old French or Latin, roots of the word accept, meaning take what offered, take without resistance. And there are different kind of slight nuances. But curious, what would it mean to you? How you could accept fear?
I think accepting fear, it doesn't mean that you resign yourself. It doesn't mean that it's funny, right? When we're in this moment, but it's the acceptance of what is. I think that, when we started off, we talked about acknowledging it and observing it and exploring it early on. In the acceptance piece, it's not, okay, I have fear and I'm going to walk away completely. It's accepting that it is part of who we are. It's accepting it as us being human beings, but it's not to dismiss it. It's not to resign yourself of, okay, I'm just going to avoid it again. And I think that's part of this part of acceptance. Is it's not avoiding. It's saying, I see you, fear. I see what I've identified as my fear. But it's about where, again, our thoughts are going. Where is our attention going? And what we understand is that if we have a level of acceptance of what is, it starts to calm our brain down. It starts to allow us to begin to focus on other things. And maybe those focuses are on the ways that we can work through it, on the ways that we might be able to put our attention on things that are going to serve us, that things that are going to build us up, as opposed to bringing us down, as fear and this obsession and the focus of fear often will bring us down. So again, I think what it does is it calms the brain when we say, okay, I see you, or okay, I understand what's going on here. I've explored this. I understand what the cause is, or I understand what the root of this fear might be. But it's not about walking away. It's about acknowledging it and saying, I see you. And also it's about, again, where am I going to put my attention? And when we accept it, it provides us that space to begin to look in other places for more positive aspects of life, or maybe again how I might resolve some of these aspects of this fear. What can I do to help minimize these feelings? So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a tricky one,
that's
right?
the conclusion. No, I'm joking. No, I hear you, and I totally, yeah. I mean, when we are discussing words which has certain level of kind of abstract meaning, there are lots of nuances and lots of things we need to support what we understand with many other words. I mean, that's how it is. I remember in university, in our first philosophy lesson, our teacher, professor, just put it kind of the chair on the table. I was curious. It was like very extraordinary way of explaining. He said, okay, guys, what do you see? Everybody like, yeah, chair, it's chair. Well, okay, do you think you know what it is? everybody laughing a little bit. Yeah, of course we know it's a chair, But he said, let's just imagine that this chair has not 3 legs, but 4, or sorry, not 4 legs, but 5. Can you imagine everybody like, yeah, is it still chair? What about 3? What about it become smaller, and now it's, like size of which, you could put it in your palm. Is it still chair? I mean, we started to doubt, like, okay, where chair will stop become chair and what chair really is. I mean, we are walking through the life believing that we understand what word really mean, and and when it comes to when we start checking it, actually we don't. We have no clue, or we have our own vague definition. And somehow when we're communicating with other people, we assume that they exactly understand what we mean, even though if we dig deeper, we don't even know what we are saying. So sorry for confusion, but to accept, well, I mean, I am listening to you, and in my mind there are like my way of how I would explain, my way of accepting things. I do believe that word is a label. Behind the label there is something which is kind of richer and have many different, the kind of sides. And I believe that if we manage to label event or phenomena with some kind of pure negative thing, like a pure negative, like a meaning of that label, it's very difficult for us to accept it. I mean, we have a resistance to that, like a natural resistance to something which we label with a negativity. So that's why when you say fear, how to accept fear? Well, as soon as we start discussing that fear is a mechanism which body, created for us not to be how to say it, like a reckless, not to damage ourselves, not to put our hand in fire, after we already experienced what it is. It's like if it's a warning signal, then it's not that negative. So that we discussed last time, that conversational reframing, when we are learning to understand what fear really for, like a main physiological almost function, then it's not that negative. And I think it's going to be easier to say that, yeah, I have it. I designed to have it. It's a part of being human. I mean, of course, everybody has a fear, because fear is supposed to stop us from doing, things in a, for example, unknown territory. Why uncertainty very often associated and create fears? Because we cannot really, how to say it, we cannot plan or make a prognosis what is going to happen. Uncertainty meaning we have difficulties to calculate. Okay, then Mother Nature immediately screaming, careful. Is it normal? Of course it is. And when it's normal to accept it, easier, it doesn't have that much, control over us. I mean, that for me, that kind of acceptance is like, it's the way we're labeling things. And that's why in my case, do you remember we discussed like why meditation is working for me? I don't need maybe conversational reframing a lot. Meditation working. Why? Meditation is dislabeling it completely. It's like an extreme version. If you look at fear with no label, it's just energy. It's just energy. It's anger or fear or positive one, love. It's just a labeled energy. So in my understanding, there is you can relabel it and make it softer. You have chances to accept it, or you could dislabel it completely. And when you look at dislabeled fear, it will start flowing. It's just energy. You can use that energy. As I remember in the first conversation I mentioned, there are some martial arts schools which are training to feel fear to unlock super capabilities. People, imagine that because of fear, you're unlocking your ability to jump 3 meters high. It's like, what kind of fighter you're going to be with that kind of power? But you need to, master the fear, because fear in this case unlocking reserves of your body. So yeah, sorry for long.
No, that was,
yeah.
but Alex, I mean, that was a wonderful, connection to how you envision it. And I think, what was really the biggest takeaway in when I was listening to you was about this idea of where does our energy go? And if we are still consumed with those thoughts about these negative, this fear and this negative energy, we're still feeding it. I guess that's maybe the way that I think about it, is that we're feeding it. Once we see it and we touch it, and we acknowledge it and we accept it for what it is, we start to change that energy, as you said.
Yeah.
And now, what is the energy, or where do we want to begin to put that other energy that we were using so much on the fear? Where do we want that to go? Where and now we've opened up ourselves in that space to allow that energy to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And where that energy might be most useful to us.
Perfect.
Because we're recognizing that fear is real. We've acknowledged it, but where do we really want to go to feel a little better, and use that energy, like you said, even in martial arts, as it's a whole beautiful dance, but it is about how you move that energy, into different spaces, and how can we move that energy into a positive space and something that's going to be helpful to us.
Yeah. Well, in martial arts, totally, I agree with you 100%, especially in martial arts, like fear actually can bring lots of energy. I mean, it's like you can use it. You're supposed to use it, to get yourself better, because fear itself contains huge reserves of energy. And it's kind of almost like waste, not to utilize it. It could be a powerful source, for your fights, if you are in a martial arts kind of world. But it's interesting, you mentioned flowing of energy, and I remembered, well, public speaking, for example, I like, everyone has kind of shaking. It never goes away. The when you are about to start, I don't know, go in front of, I don't know, in my case, I remember the biggest amount of people I've been talking to, I think it was 400 or 700, some kind of, under 1,000 people. But I remember shaking, sweating palms, and well, it seems like no reason. They are people. I am person. I mean, I know how to talk to people. What's the problem? I mean, but what I do remember is that, okay, I feel fear. I know one thing. As soon as I start talking, and as soon as I move from my head to action, that's it. It's bye-bye fear. I mean, it cannot combine. Fear exists when you are in your head and you are actually not in action. You are literally, that, as you said, paralysis. You are in your head. That's where fear, resides, and that's how it can take control over you. As soon as you start moving, as soon as you are in action, well, it's almost like maybe different part of the brain. I mean, probably neuroscientists will tell you, well, fear is living over there, but your action living here. So as soon as you start acting, that's it. I mean, you cannot be in both places simultaneously. So fear is not there anymore. You're already purely in action. So that's kind of flowing if you divert your energy and say, okay, move on, and then we'll deal, along the way. And that's probably the way how, you could go through the fear, and what acceptance really is. It's like a coexistence. In my case, I see it as a coexistence, and knowing that it's just a certain mechanism, it's a certain function, it's supposed to do certain things. And in some circumstances, it could be a handicap for us if we put too much energy into it and allow it to grow. But if we kind of cautious, it's just a thing which always there, and in many cases helps us. So that's acceptance. That's who we are, and we have it. You have your hand, you have your head, and you have your fears. You're not fighting with your head or with your hand, I mean, against your legs. It's ridiculous, right?
Alex, thank you for sharing that, because one of the things that you said was this idea of coexistence, that we are, as human beings, able to exist in this space of having fear, and the other, to have that energy that we can move forward in, but they do coexist. It's maybe the idea I always think about is, which one are we feeding? Which one are we placing our attention to? Because they will be there. But again, which do we feed? Which one do we want to grow? And maybe that's, I often think about that for myself. Where am I? How much am I feeding that fear and that negativity? Versus, do I want to feed this positive aspect, and focus on how I want to feel better, and how and ideas about how to be in that space where I'm it's positive and it's moving forward. And the other thing that I think was really important is this idea of taking action. Because sometimes when we move, and it was just reminding me of the story that I told in the first episode, is that it was the zip line. And I mean, sweating and shaking and just all up in here. And there was a point where I had to take action. It was necessary. And, ultimately we will get into the release and the letting go, but it's that moment. And maybe the acceptance is action. Maybe the A is action, acceptance and action.
Interesting idea.
How they might.
I believe that's kind of, that's probably one of the routes which we're supposed to go. Otherwise, if we postpone in action, fear has more chances, to dominate. And actually, if you really want energy to flow and transform that kind of, I would say, frozen energy, which fear is, to something which is moving, well, action would be the best choice. So if you would think about one or two questions, I already, my coaching ears kind of hearing already some questions like, what am I feeding, or what am I paying attention to? But can you think of some questions, like a coaching questions, which people could think in their heads when they notice, guys, if you remember, we need to notice it, or to face our fears first, explore it. I believe that exploration and probably acceptance, they're kind of almost like not the same phase, but they are, one helps to move to another. If we're good at exploration, probably we are finding some, relabeling opportunities, which will lead us to, to easy acceptance. So what kind of questions would you, suggest people to think of in order to, help to accept their fears?
One of the questions that comes up is, how do I want to feel? How do I want to feel? And another question is, how, in this moment, how is it serving me? How is it serving my body, my mind, and my spirit, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how is this serving me? And to answer those questions, you know, well, it's, you know, anybody, you know, again, it depends on the person, but again, how do I want to feel?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and how is this serving me right now?
Okay. And from my side, I would say like this: if I like, if there is a fear which I was able to notice and I face it and explored it a little bit, I would ask myself, well, you know, fear is warning me against that particular situation. So the question is, what kind of plan that fear will motivate me to create and execute? So if I fear that, oh, I don't, you know, I have a business problems and people will not buy, you know, my products anymore because of that coronavirus changed the world and all my services now kind of obsolete. Okay, so what kind of plan or what kind of services or how can I change things? What am I supposed to do? You see, there are many questions. But anyway, I would see fear as a pure warning signal for me to take action. And my action would be to create a plan to describe the situation kind of in a, like to put that situation on the table and start thinking, well, if old strategies are not working and fear tells me that things might go, you know, in this particular direction, I need a new strategy, new plan. So let's start working on it. And that would be my kind of action. You know, I hope that fear would be a great source and motivation to create that plan, to execute it. You know, fear is a great motivator. So why not to look at that way?
It's
So
wonderful.
that, yeah, those
Yeah,
would be my questions.
yeah.
Okay, so we are talking around 30 minutes. Probably we already at least, you know, gave people some food, you know, for thoughts. Would you like to say something, you know, in the end? If you do, yeah, go ahead.
As quickly, what I would say is that this this is a process, and this doesn't always come naturally for people. And so this is something that 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 we work through and we continue. It's like practicing. You know, it's not that this, you know, quickly happens and we can go through each of these stages. It takes time and it takes
Yeah,
practice, but it's taking those moments to check in with oneself and think about these, you know, facing it and exploring it and now accepting. And so again, I guess it's the message is be gentle on yourself, because this is a process that many of us are not used to experiencing, where we kind of sit quietly with ourselves and ask these questions. And so
yeah.
I just wanted to offer that as well, is to take time and to be gentle on oneself when they're asking themselves these questions and when they're
Yeah.
going through this type of process.
Super. I would add exactly in the same line as you just said that the world changed, for example. And we as a human beings, you know, with our brain, which creates certain particular behavioral patterns and kind of routines, we, we do need time to change accordingly. So being harsh with yourself and that you are not sure how to behave or what will be the new situation and you are worried, well, it doesn't make sense. I mean, you're supposed to understand that it does take time for us to create new patterns, new behavior. Again, we will find comfort there, but there will be time when we are not sure. And that's what uncertainty and fear kind of manifest. It's manifests that now it's time to change and we are in the process of it. That's it. It doesn't mean anything else. So be in a coexisting mode, understanding what it is, and take it easy. So that would be my recommendation to me, to myself, and to to people around us. John, pleasure to talk with
Thank you.
you. I hope we explored a little bit phase 3 in your model, and next time we'll dive into the last one, which is release. Yeah. So think about that, and in our next meeting we will discuss that as well. Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you for watching and see you soon. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Later
Thank
on.
you, Alex. Bye-bye.